Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is your girl, Tracie L James, and I'm back. That's right. I am back with yet another amazing woman entrepreneur. And let me tell you something. The lady that I'm about to bring on right now, I've been looking forward to this conversation because guess what? She from Mississippi. She my home girl from Jackson, Mississippi. Matter of fact, I used to listen to her on the radio. That's right. She was a radio personality turned brand strategist. And let me just tell you this. That's just a little bit of who she is. And in the midst of this conversation, I want to make sure you got your notepad because she's going to drop some nuggets. All right. I already know they are coming. So help me welcome the one and only Maranda Joiner.
Well, thank you for having me, Tracie. Listen, I just need you to introduce me everywhere I go, like grocery stores, gas stations, any room I'm entering, just give me that. Thank you for that warm welcome.
You are so welcome. So listen, I have watched you kind of transition because you were a radio personality in Jackson. And so as you began to make that journey, it was like, what's she doing? This seems pretty awesome. This is kind of cool what she's doing. And to watch the journey from the outside looking in, there's certain things you see, but then there are also things you don't see. So in the midst of this conversation, I want to kind of let people know really and truly who you are. So y'all know what my question is, right? Y'all know, you've been watching me long enough. The first question is always, who are you and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, I love that question. And I don't want to get too deep or make this answer too drawn out, but I remember reading a book in 2019 that was called The Untethered Soul. And it talked about how we are so quick to wrap our identity into titles. And it was really the moment in my life where I shifted and said, you know what? We do that. Like we say, we're a mom, we're a wife, we're a friend, we're a brand strategist, a radio personality. But then you ask the question, if those things cease to exist, do you stop existing? And you don't. So it really, I remember in those moments was when I was really searching for the deeper answers. So to answer your question, who I feel like in my essence, outside of the titles that you can read in my bio, I feel like I am a space holder, right? I feel like I am an energy shifter. I wholeheartedly feel like I'm put on this earth to really hold space for people in a way to help them to be seen, and to be seen in a way that doesn't involve shame so that they can be okay with where they are and grow from that place. I feel like I am an encourager and a motivator. And I really feel like anybody that ever attaches to me in life leaves fueled. Either you leave burned out because it's too much for you and you weren't ready for this boost, or you leave fueled and feeling a lot, lighter, but also more empowered about where you are and where you're going. So those are the things that I feel like in my essence, I feel like that's what I am. I'm an energy shifter. And I feel like I carry a lot of that.
Oh, I absolutely can definitely attest to that. Anyone in the Jackson area who's ever been to your events, your poetry events,
Synergy nights.
Synergy
Somebody
night.
messaged me about it today, and we haven't done one since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020.
Right. Yes. And one of the things that I loved about it was just that. It was the energy in the space. You could come in feeling one way. And there were times where a friend of mine would be like, hey, we got to go to Synergy. And I was like, girl, I just got through working. I'm tired. But then we show up and you hit the mic. Tiger would start playing.
Yeah.
And the next thing I knew, I was up for a while. It shifted. So that's one thing I do admire about you and how you use your voice to really elevate other people. So let me ask you this. What made you make that decision to transition? Because you were doing well at the radio station, hey, from the outside looking in, looks great. She's on the radio. She's all over the place. People know her face. People know her voice. why the shift? What made you make that decision?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And all transparency, the radio station, I'll start by saying this, where I worked at WJMI, with a group of people there, it's like one of those spaces that's like a family. And it's a family in a way where it's like the cute kind of family, but also the very dysfunctional type of family, to where we all we got. Like we family, like we gonna be with Uncle Leroy, who we know he be drinking and talking crazy, but we love Uncle Leroy, right? So it was really that type of environment, to where they worked together for so long. And we, honestly, because I was there for off and on a series of about 14 years of my life working at the radio station, a very close knit group of people that just worked well together. But also the pro and the con to that. So the pro is that it felt like that, right? So it was just a great environment, and you were very lucky to be in that space. And once you're in, you're in. And the con is that nobody's going anywhere. So the people are there. So, once you're there, you have to figure out, as a radio personality, how do you build and expand your career outside of that small space of radio? Because radio is, while it can connect you, the smart thing to do while you're there is to utilize your connections, learn networking, and discipline yourself and sharpen your skills so that you can do other things on the outside. And honestly, it had gotten to a point really where I just felt like I had kind of reached the ceiling. And I wanted to take a leap and do something different. And so I ended up leaving the radio station. But again, it wasn't the most lucrative job just by itself. And I left there looking to kind of get into PR a little bit for a nonprofit. Nobody told me how crazy it was to work for a nonprofit. That lasted about 6 months. I was like, oh, didn't nobody tell me? I was so green. I was like, we're going to change the world. And then I got in and I was like, y'all don't really care about changing. Well, y'all do, but kind of, but it's not like this. I don't want to. Was literally, that was the thought process in my head. It sounds that discombobulated. Like, wait, not like, but y'all are kind of impacting, but I don't like this how y'all act on the inside. So I left there kind of desperately looking for things to do. And at the time, I was still working with the comedian at the time that I was helping to build her career, which here in Jackson, a lot of people know Rita Brent, and really searching, for purpose for myself, honestly, feeling a little unfulfilled, really enjoying some of the work that I was doing, but really feeling like, man, it was that little voice on the inside, or feeling on the inside, that was like, you're supposed to be doing a little something more. And honestly, I am a firm believer in the fact that we possess everything we need to be successful. We have every answer already on the inside of us without outside validation or confirmation. And it becomes our job to put ourselves in a position to be able to hear that, one, and then to be able to trust it, two, and then to actually act on it, three, right? Most people, either they dabble in the, I hear it, I trust it a little bit, but a lot of people don't make it to the action because they're looking for exterior things. And I'm just not one that looks for a lot of exterior validation. So I was like, I feel it. Let me just try it out and see what happens in the world. So I've had enough practice in my life of just leaning into that intuition. And that's what I did. I just took a chance. I had left the nonprofit and started working part-time at a car dealership in the service department, working for an old boss of mine who I really loved, a really good friend of mine. And I ended up leaving there. I just ended up quitting one day when things kind of went left with that job, with the environment. It got a little hostile. And I said, you know what, if now, when? If not now, when? Like, when do I do it? So I made the leap and decided to work for myself, something I had been feeling the bug, knowing I was supposed to do since I was in my 20s, probably earlier, and didn't do it until I was in my mid to late 30s. So I took a long time to jump into the action part of it too, out of fear, but I finally did it. And that's how it happened. I think I answered your question. I know I kind of went on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I understand so much of what you share, because I've done the nonprofit thing. I've done the faith-based ministry thing.
Listen.
And I call it going behind the veil.
Yeah.
But the appearance on the outside is one thing. And look, don't be DMing me and commenting saying I'm not dragging nonprofits. But some nonprofits, there's a perceived view on the outside, and then on the inside is something completely different.
Yeah. And I just jump in and say this. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'll just jump in and say this, that anything that is run by people, period, from any corporation, any organization, because just a real quick nugget, as you were saying that, I remember too, that when I first came back to the radio for my last like jump in before went back on the air, I came back in sales for the first time in like 14, I mean, in the 14 years, I had never been in sales. And somehow I ended up being in sales, and I ended up spending a lot of time trying to convince business owners that advertisement was something and marketing was something that they needed and was important. And it was in those moments where I was going behind the scenes. And I really feel like God put me in that position because I was going behind the scenes and seeing how businesses were run that from the outside looked like they had together. And I was like, oh, this how y'all run it back? Man, I know I could go into business. It low key gave me the boost to say, maybe you can do this.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm definitely on page with you because I did some business consulting work when I first moved back to Mississippi because I had been gone to Nashville, hadn't really had a job in a couple of years because I had my son. And it was just weird that I'm sitting down with people and they're talking about they want to grow their business, and it's a business that's been around for a long time, has great street cred, and I'm trying to do financial docs to get financing, and they're handing me
Yes.
like, what? Wait a minute. These are your financial documents in a shoebox,
Yep.
and this other little box, you know, and it just blew my mind. And I think, you know, for me, I saw a need in respect to having an understanding of truly how to run the back end of that business so you can really grow it at the level it really should be grown.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what you probably saw when you were in sales at the radio station.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with people's inability to believe in their capability beyond dreaming. I also discovered when I shifted into being an entrepreneur and meeting with so many entrepreneurs that people really don't dream big about their businesses. It's they spend a lot of time thinking about the next best thing. What is the next step I could take? And sometimes not even the next best thing, just the next thing I can do to survive and stay. It really comes from a place of, I won't say desperation, but out of like a fear of, well, let me do this so I don't go under or tank, as opposed to spending time living in that space of imagining the best outcome, spending time believing that you have the capability and the capacity to hold and to handle growth, right? To build a team, to trust people, to expand your network. And so there is a lot of self-doubt that I think creeps in with people that keeps them stagnant. And most people really look at their success as luck almost, as opposed to this is what it's supposed to be. Let's move to the next level.
Yeah. And I can see that because it's like there's not a concept of how did I get here? How did I make this happen?
Yeah.
It seems like it's more about, oh, it just kind of happened by chance. You know, at the time I opened my business, it was just the right time.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's something about what you're producing that brings people in. And that's part of what makes your business great. But let's put some structure behind it. Let's put some systems in place so you can keep replicating the success and actually grow it where you want to go.
Yes, it's called strategy.
Yes.
Planning and strategy. And then try it out. And if it don't work, try it again. Try something else.
And
so yes.
Yeah, that whole concept of failing often, failing fast, failing forward. I had a negative view of failure.
Oh yeah.
When I was growing up, because I was always kind of pushed in many ways. Coming from a family of educators, you wanted to get the perfect grades, you want to have the perfect behavior. But what I learned to do was create personas. So there was Tracie in the classroom.
Yeah.
There was Tracie in dance. There was Tracie in choir.
Yeah.
Wherever I was, it was a little different Tracie depending upon what the person in authority wanted to see from me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in my early 30s when I was going through my divorce, trying to figure out who is Tracie.
Yep.
You
Ain't that
know,
something? Ain't that
yeah.
something? We become these things, right? We fulfill these titles and roles. Again, going back to that book, right?
Hmm.
We move into and we start showing up as the person we think people want us to be or we think we should be. You know, I often say that failure is just the universe or just the world's way of telling us to try something else. And I recently did an interview with I don't know if you know Sheena Allen. She is a friend and one of the few. I think she's the youngest Black woman to own a digital online bank. She's from Terry, Mississippi,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, Sheena. And we did an interview with her at an event we did. We brought her in as the one of our guests, and she said that in Silicon Valley they have failure conferences to celebrate failure, so that it shifts the mindset, like a real conference that's called a failure conference, to shift the people's mindset about failing to understand that it is what you need in order to figure out what you need to do to be successful. So it literally is a part of the process. And we spend so much time trying to avoid looking like a failure or making mistakes. But the reality is that you got to start messy in order to be great. And if you can't start messy, you might not ever make it to greatness. So
oh, absolutely. Talking to a recovering perfectionist over here. And, that kind of leads me into my next question because I know what it took for me to write my first book. Okay.
yeah.
And all the things I had to overcome within to get that first book. So, what was the number one thing you learned in the midst of that process?
Ooh, that's a great question. The number one thing I learned in the midst of writing the book, I don't know that anyone's ever asked me that. Um, I would say probably the biggest lesson that I learned that's not going to be like, oh, I should have done things this way or that or the other is that, yeah, I think probably the lesson that I learned that I hold the dearest to my heart is that what I have like on the inside is value to this world. And because there was a moment where for me, I'm a checklist person. Like it's like, all right, because the book started as, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? That was literally how I was treating it. Like, I need a product. So maybe I should write a book. All right, cool. What does that look like? What's the process? Like there's a process in my mind. I wasn't trying to think about it like some big super accomplishment for Miranda to say she wrote a book and this is going to be my best book ever. It was like, what's the checklist? Okay, I'm doing all this talking, having all of these podcast interviews, doing these workshops. I'm giving out so much information. I need to condense this and put in a product for people to have. Um, and I think the biggest lesson, and even as I started that, it was easy for me to acknowledge that in real time, what I had to say and express was valuable. But it was something different about putting it into something that is going to be apart from me and in somebody's household or in someone's hand and open to that vulnerability of criticism of this is something that I created, this is something that I think. And it was that thing of what if somebody doesn't agree with me or what if I say something that isn't right or but it just boiled down to me trusting that the value that I'm bringing in this space and who I'm showing up as is worthy of being put out into this world for more people than can stand in front of me. And so I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that there's value in what I bring to this world. And I say that because when the book started, when we started the process, I'm really good at, of course, because branding is my thing. To build excitement around a thing is I mean, I won't say it's the easiest thing, but I get it, so I know how to do it. So there was excitement about the book. There was excitement about the cover, and people were excited when I said I was about to launch the book, and people were like responding and giving me all this good feedback. And then I realized, oh wait, Miranda, nobody's read the book to even know if they like what's in it, because that's the purpose of a book. so so right now you still don't even know if people actually like the book for what it is. And so there was just along the whole journey there were those moments that I had of kind of rocking back and forth between, okay, Miranda, you're in this space and you deserve to be here. So I think that was the biggest lesson, is the value that I bring into this world.
Absolutely. And I will tell you this, I devoured that book in a weekend. I sat down with that book, and coming from a person who got her degree in marketing from Jackson State University,
Oh, come on.
um, I was blown away about how well you were able to take concepts and theory and really break them down into digestible spaces for
Yes.
people to be able
Yes.
to implement, and I was just loving it. So I applaud you, girl, for bringing what's inside of you into the world, because it's definitely needed.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I'm going to tell you right now, another one of my big fears during the process was people who are actually readers and intellectuals, right? So you're going to have those categories of people who are just hype and just like, oh, this is great, and then you're going to have those people who are actually readers and like, okay, are going to really look at it from that space. And it was so important to me to not create a book that was full of so much information and overwhelm and jargon, because I put myself in the space of an entrepreneur that just help me to get it, because I don't get it, right? And that's really where I wrote that book, from that perspective. That's why it's not super packed with so much detail and information. I want to make it as light, and I just wanted it to be like a almost like a bunch of aha moments, like, oh, moments where it kind of clicks to get it, like, this is why branding is important, this is why purpose is important. And I want it to be extremely simple, easy to digest. And as an entrepreneur, we don't have a lot of time. So I love the fact that people say, Miranda, I read that book in a short amount of time, and it got to the point, and it helped me to shift and think about things in a way that I hadn't thought about. So
Yeah.
that was my intention. So I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, I was able to I took some notes and some things like, oh, you know what? I know that. Okay, hold up. What did she say to do? Okay, let me take some notes, because, oftentimes, with the fact that, yeah, I've worked in business, I worked in sales, worked in marketing, but it's different when you're packaging yourself,
Woo.
your thoughts, your views into something for somebody else to back. It's completely different.
Different for the person
So,
who does it for people. Yes.
right.
Definitely.
So just in that process of reading the book, one of the things it helped me see was, okay, yes, I know now she's showing me exactly some steps I can take to implement what I know for
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
And so, it's been, definitely was a good experience for me, and had me add some more tasks to my marketing plan that I had left out, little things. So thank you so much for taking the leap of stepping out there, because it is taking a part of yourself and putting it out into the world and saying, do you like it?
Do you like it? Like me?
Yeah, that Sally Field thing. You really like me.
You're so vulnerable in those spaces. And
Yeah.
that
And
takes so much courage.
yeah. And I want people to understand that when someone steps out to start a business, it they're not 100% confident they're going to be able
Oh,
to do it. There are nerves, there are fears, there are doubts,
yes.
and it's like this.
Yes.
One moment you're like, yes, somebody said yes, they signed, and then the next three calls you get no's, and it sends you down in a spiral. Oh, that was the luck,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what advice would you give someone who is, say, they are at that point where they're like, they don't see where they can go any further where they currently are, and they feel that inkling that entrepreneurship is their thing?
Mhm.
What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah. So to somebody who feels like they can't go any further than where they are, and they feel that push to be an entrepreneur, um, the first thing that I would say you know, is that the reality is if you feel it, then that means that there is something in you that is calling you to be in that space. And also, what's so beautiful about the way that this world is created, the way that energy is, the way that God is, however you show up in this space, it doesn't matter to me. It's all the same. It's fluid, right? That at the end of the day, if there's a desire within you to do it, the moment you start having some actions to move towards that, things start moving towards you to help you to bring that thing to life. And every single thing is about perspective and mindset. Every single thing that we do is rooted in the mindset and perspective. So my advice would be is that if, and I told somebody this the other day, we were having this conversation and they were having limited beliefs about where they want to be in their career and what she wanted to do. And she said, I have these limiting thoughts. She said, but I try to just think my way out of, and be in this different space. And I said, well, here's the thing about a mindset and a limiting belief is that you can't address a limiting thought or belief with another thought. You have to have some physical action to counter that belief. So what that means is if something is saying, hey, be fearful, don't do this thing, what if, the way to counteract that, the antidote to fear is action. So that means there needs to be some physical thing that you make the decision to do, not you're going to feel like it, that you make the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to do the thing anyway. I'm nervous, but I'm going to do it. It's the root of this is what feel the fear and do it anyway means. So if you feel like there is hesitation for you to do the thing, I say whatever that next step is, to just do it no matter what you're feeling. Because at the end of the day, fear is always going to be present. It's never something you're going to be able to get over. So my charge to you is to make a decision, to make a plan for fear, to ask yourself how you're going to dance with fear when it pops up, and then make the decision to say, I'm going to do the next thing, even if it's small, whatever it is, to take that one step to the next thing, so that you won't allow fear to make you stagnant, to sit you down. We weren't created to be stopped by fear. We were created to move through it. So that would be my advice, to think about how to shift your mindset, and to address all the fears you're having with some action.
Absolutely. I'll tell you this. A friend of mine gave me Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes, for Christmas.
Yeah.
In 2015. And I didn't touch that book at first. I was like, I'll get to it, And I finally sat down and read it probably like mid 2016.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, ooh, it was challenging to me because the whole idea of saying yes to what you're afraid of, what brings fear, what brings doubt, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. But let me tell you this.
Yes.
When I took that step and said, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to say yes to something that scares me. Mm-hmm. And as I did, every single time that every new thing I said yes to, the more confidence I got.
Yeah.
Because things just started coming to me. Yes. And I had a chance to go to a conference, actually was here in Houston. And I didn't have the money. I'm just going to be honest. So money was tight. I was check to check.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, I needed $1,000 just to go to the conference. That wasn't travel. That wasn't hotel. That wasn't food. Wow. It was just $1,000. Well, I saw that they were offering a scholarship. So I was like, ooh. And I had to write, and I talk a lot if you can't tell, in 150 words or less, why I should be given the scholarship. So I got on the phone with a friend of mine and we figured out 150 words. Why? But then we got even more creative and I added a quote into the signature line on my email that kind of added to what I said.
Sure.
I got the scholarship.
Yes.
And then at that point it was $250 that I had to pay just to hold my spot. Oh, praise God. Okay.
Right.
And then fast forward, I'm still trying to figure out, Trace, you need money to get there, for eat, hotel, all of this. Well, got a deal because I had some Hilton Honors points because I had been traveling for work.
Nice.
And so I was able to get a room at the DoubleTree where the conference was hosted.
Come on.
For $89 a night. A DoubleTree room for $89.
Because
it was where I was supposed to be.
And you
And
moved. And
I
you moved.
moved. I
You
moved
did something.
and ended up having a friend of mine. We ran into each other in downtown Jackson. And running into folks in downtown Jackson is not a common thing, okay?
Yeah, right.
But we ran into each other and I was telling him about everything that God had been doing, moving to get me there.
Mhm.
And he said, oh, okay. He said, so what did you work out in respect to your hotel? I said, I'm still working on it. He said, okay. He said, well, send me the total.
Ain't that something? Yep.
And the next day he had me come by his office. He wrote me a check for my hotel and travel. And he was
Yes.
like, this is me sewing into you.
Yes.
He said, because I believe in you. And I was like, what?
Yep.
And literally everything was handled. And I'm sharing that story to say, when you do address your fear and your doubt and you take that step, the provision is there.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not going to show you the provision until you take that first step.
Yes, indeed. The path is waiting to open up and it's not going to reveal itself until you start moving. You just have to go. So you have to, again, go back to really putting things in perspective and saying, what is really identifying what your fear is rooted in. And then so you can identify how you're going to show up and dance with it. Fear is either rooted in a few things. We're either worried about failing, which again, we've already addressed. Failure is just the world trying to tell you to figure it out. It's either rooted in worrying about what people think about what you're doing. And most of the time, half those people that are judging aren't doing anything because the people that are actually doing stuff understand what you're going through. And then the last part is just our fear of believing in ourselves. We're just afraid. So usually those are the big three things people are fearful of. Finding out what is my fear rooted in with this, and then making a plan to move through it, to address it and say, I'm just going to dance with this thing. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And that makes all the difference. So Maranda, for you, as we wrap up, what's next for you? Where are you headed? What's that vision look like for Maranda Joiner?
Yes, let's talk about it because I have not really had the chance to talk about it. This interview is catching me in a space where I have paused the momentum of me pushing my brand to reposition myself, honestly. My big goal with my brand and my business is to become a resource for as many entrepreneurs as possible in this world to help them feel less overwhelmed about marketing and branding, but also to expand that that lack of overwhelm, right? To mindset, business organization, and marketing and branding, which I feel like are the big three things that people struggle with, that I've learned in this short time of being in business, that, oh, this is a pattern. And so for me, I am working on creating resources to make it as simple as my book, but a lot more thorough, a lot more detailed, and a lot more resourceful for entrepreneurs to get into this space. Because I remember when I started, there weren't many spaces that I felt like I could go to that could help me with all the things I was struggling with mentally, like not financially, but mentally, when it came to how to build this business. And then the marketing side, I knew for the most part that was kind of my thing, but I was still struggling with like pulling people and how to make it come all together for myself. And so I want to be able to create a space where it's not as complicated for people to have these resources. And that is my goal, is to be that with the business and with the team. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. You know, and I think that's one of the things that sometimes people don't understand about being an entrepreneur. It is a journey.
Yes.
Where you start is not necessarily where you'll end in respect to your journey, because things evolve, things happen.
Yes.
And that piece that you're shown up front is just a piece of it.
Yes.
I've gone through my own evolution from doing leadership development into now shifting into event management and helping people put on profitable events for their businesses, because I see it, they do it, but they're not making money with it, or they're making some money and they're losing their mind, ready to pull their hair out. So it's that thing of being able to step in and say, I need you to stand in your expertise. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna support you so you can show up at your event, be the host, and know everything else is handled. but I didn't understand it when I first started out, that ultimately this is where I'm going to end up being, because that's the space I see a need for, that I know I can feel. And so if anyone out there wants to connect with Maranda, she's going to tell you where you can connect with her.
Let's do that. And I also want to say this, just to add to that question too. I once heard a guy on a podcast say that the wealthy do three things. They stop exchanging their time for money, they invest, and then they pour into people. That's also where I'm shooting to be in the long haul. That's where I want to retire, right there.
Yes.
So this is where you can find me. You can find me on social media, all of the platforms. It's my name, Maranda Joiner. That's MARANDAJOINER. Also, you can contact me if you want to reach out to me through my website. It's marandajoiner.com. You can find me on Instagram. I spend a lot of time there. You can find me on, again, all the platforms. I have a presence there. So 9 times out of 10, within a week's time to 2 weeks, I'm going to check all of them at some point. So yeah, reach out to me there. And in the meantime, hopefully I can catch you at a conference, on a stage, in a space, at an expo. I don't know, somewhere. If you see me in these streets, roll up on me and say hello.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll have all of her contact information below this video as always. And Maranda, I want to thank you again for coming and being a part. And we didn't even have this plan, y'all. We just both showed up in pink. Okay. This was not planned. It was just the energy that was flowing. And so I do appreciate it.
We were where we were supposed to be. No, thank you for having me. I love that we were matching today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So everyone, I just want to thank you for joining me. And I hope that you were able to gather some nuggets from Miss Maranda Joiner. And I look forward to seeing you right back here next time. And until then, just remember, no matter what happens, just do it regardless. Zero excuses allowed. Take care. Love ya. Bye.